Today's video, we're going to be checking out the Quantum Mechanix Master Series Firefly. This is Malcolm Reynolds' 1/6 scale articulated figure. We're also going to be having a look at the exclusive version that's going to also include the Laster laser pistol. Malcolm Reynolds, portrayed by actor Nathan Fillion, would captain the ship Serenity in the show Firefly, which was premiered in the US on the Fox network on September 20th, 2002. Unfortunately, it was canceled. It was canceled after 11 of the 14 produced episodes were aired, but luckily, Firefly would see light of day again as it was released to theaters in a standalone film called Serenity. At the very beginning of this review, when we were doing some first turnarounds, you might have noticed that something seemed a little off on Malcolm's head. And that's actually because the folks over at Quantum Mechanix have given you two heads to come included with the figure. Yes, initially, this is what the figure was going to be released looking like. And I don't have to say necessarily it's a bad head sculpt, but it does feel unfinished. And probably a lot of that can be chalked up to the paint. Yeah, there's nothing really negatively wrong with the head sculpt, although I have to admit that the head seems big. If you compare it to the rest of his torso, the head does seem a little on the giant side, but I don't think it's all that bad, really. It's a good head sculpt. I think really what misses its mark on this particular head sculpt is the paint. It otherwise kind of feels a little on the muddy side, especially when you look at the areas around the eyes and the nose. The eyes are the biggest problem for me. I think something seems off on the eyes. Like they've got this red outlining, almost a dark red outlining around the eyeball area. But then otherwise, it just feels like the paint, I don't want to say basic, but it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of extra paint, shading, or anything to the face. It's very much got a very neutral sort of paint tone to it. And I think a lot of it just ends up making him look more like a mask than it does anything else. Ultimately, what caused this figure to be slightly delayed with its eventual release is that the folks over at Quantum Mechanix would go back and resculpt a brand new head, which they also included with this figure. And speaking of included, they also give you this extra little card on the one side, QMX, with the read-up saying, "Dear fellow brown coat, we're very excited to present you with the Malcolm Reynolds 1/6 scale articulated figure, a labor of love for us and a heartfelt homage to Firefly. In production, the first Mal head was quite good, but the QMX Master Series strives for best in class, so we took the extra time and effort to show Captain Mal at his very finest. We've included both heads to offer you a choice. We hope you enjoy the articulated figure as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Sincerely, Andy Gore, CEO of Quantum Mechanix." Leaving Malcolm Reynolds slightly decapitated for the time being, I just want to show you the differencing between the two head sculpts. This one's a lot smaller of a head sculpt, and of course this is the one that we eventually get as the upgraded version to this one. But there are merits to be made for this one here. This one does seem like it's slightly older than maybe Nathan Fillion is at the time he portrays Malcolm Reynolds. This one does have a little bit more of a youthful look to it. Although it can be said that the head sculpt here on the original release, or the original planned release, does feel a little bit more simplified, especially areas such as the hair. It just seems like the hair is a little bit more underdefined, so to speak. Both head sculpts are equally good. Of course, I would lean myself a little bit more closer to using this head sculpt myself, but it's nice that they would include both. It's a good way for you to see, as a collector, the way that a company strives to go out of their way to improve something that they feel just isn't right and can't do the service to the collectible by releasing it on time, instead spending a little extra time to go back to the drawing board, so to speak, and giving us a much better head sculpt. The newer head sculpt does have a little bit more warmer tones to it, so it doesn't feel as, I don't want to say muddy, but that's the best way I can describe the original paint job that was applied to that Malcolm Reynolds head. Now, to be fair though, that may not have also been the finished look. That could have been the production heads, so they may have also gone back and just add some additional paint to it, but I do think that this is a much better looking head sculpt, both in the face and the hair. I feel like the head on the back is maybe a little too flat, as it seems like it just kind of molds up and then immediately drops down. But I do think that the head sculpt is a far superior job to what we got initially when we saw those original production photos. All the wrinkles and creases does look very uncannily, that's not even a word, but it looks exactly like Nathan Fillion. Though be it, I would say the head sculpt maybe does look like he's slightly a little older if you compare it to, say, like the production shots, or even just really watching the series, which it's a true crime that a series like Firefly would have been canceled. One of my all-time favorite sci-fi TV shows. But I do think he looks a little bit younger in the series versus what we ultimately get here with the head sculpt. Don't get me wrong, the head sculpt is really nicely done, but I do feel like it slightly is a little bit more aged here, especially like the area around his chin. Gets a little bit more rounder than I think what he originally looks like in the show. Quantum Mechanix opted to give him a very neutral expression, which I think fits perfectly for the type of character that he is in the series. I don't know if I would have maybe given him a smile, but I think this expression works the best for him. Also, you can see too all these little, this is a mark of a good company that knows how to paint their figures properly. You get all these little imperfections. The worst thing you can do, and I mean going back to the original head sculpt, is giving him very neutral, unblemished skin. And while he doesn't have a lot of imperfections, you can see that he's got these little freckles and stuff like that on the actual face. Face sculpt though, and both paint, very nicely done here. His outfit will consist of a crimson red shirt. Of course, he's got his brown coat over top of that. A pair of beige slacks, and a pair of rubberized leather-like boots. The material feels like it is a softer rubber that they use. Unfortunately, I did notice getting the figure immediately out of packaging that some of the joints are loose on this particular figure. Now, that's not be across the board necessarily. I was just unfortunately lucky enough that the knees especially are very loose on this figure. So I'm probably going to be using myself a display stand, I think, for displaying him. Not to say that he's going to topple over, but I certainly do not want this guy falling at all on my collection. Cue the display stand. He comes with a circular display base featuring the website www.qmxonline.com 2015 Quantum Mechanix. Down below you've got Malcolm Reynolds, and you've got the Firefly logo across the top there. QMX Master Series Articulated is also branded there on the top. And to assist you with standing Malcolm, he has the adjustable crotch clip, which I think will come in handy with this particular figure. I'm not going to be doing any outrageous poses with this guy anyways, but it is unfortunate that my figure, at least, does have slightly loose joints, primarily more so in the legs. The elbows aren't so bad. They are a little on the loose side, but certainly no comparison to the knee. Like this knee, of all of the things on the figure, this knee is unfortunately the loosest. Really like the quality of fabric that they used, not only for the brown coat, his signature article of clothing, but also all the stuff underneath here. He's got his crimson, like I said, his almost crimson cranberry sort of colored shirt, which if you open it up, it's got some snaps like that. Though you will be treated to a discolored torso versus the top of his head. You do, however, also get his dog tags, which are present here on the figure. Not sure if you can see it close enough, but it's got a slight age to it, and it's attached around his neck via a string. The jacket has some closure snaps on the sides, although ideally you could probably open them up and close off the jacket, as these little sections here would untab from themselves. Not even really so much untab, but you could drape it through the slot to close off the jacket. I don't know if I would really try doing that, because for how small that little hinge is, definitely would not want to break it. But all around, really nicely done here on the jacket. It does have a kind of faux suede feel to it, and simulation leather almost on the cuffs here. Nice detailing though also on the cuffs. It's not as accurate as a real leather, but it does give you a close enough representation of it. Nice professionally grade seam work also on the sides here, attaching the side portions of the sleeves to the main jacket. The collar also, underneath, you can see the level of care that they put into that. If we just open up the jacket for a second, the jacket, much like the series, is lined in interior orange color. The material itself feels closer to almost like a nylon, comparing that to the outside area of the more suede. Simply slide the jacket off by the sleeves here. You may want to take the hands also out of the sockets. And just like that, you've got yourself an unjacketed Malcolm, which equally so looks just as good as he does with the jacket on. I really like the coloring here of this cranberry sort of shirt. Shirt is done up by some snaps, a total of 3. And now, with the jacket removed, you can see the extra care that they put into the suspenders that attach themselves to the pants. It looks like they are manually fed through, like they could be removed if you wanted to unloop these. I wouldn't want to obviously do that. But the looplets look like they are also in that faux leather material. Also carries over to the back here as well. I like that a company would think this far, because sometimes if you have a jacket on a character, you can take the jacket off and you kind of start seeing the little shortcomings where they hope to hide it underneath clothing. Here is quite the contrary. I mean, they almost really want you taking the jacket off so that you can see the amount of care and detail that they put into even things like suspenders, the areas of his belt, for example, that sits a little lower past his waist and has been buckled up on the front here. And he also has the holster on the side that's going to hold his pistol, which, why don't we actually have a look at right now. The pistol is very nicely done. An updated take of an old Western pistol. It doesn't have much in the way of coloring, keeping more to a very rustic, sort of rusted brown. There's a little bit of brown in the handle, which is a slight different color to the rest of the actual metal area of the gun, but it does look quite nice. Nothing on here actually moves. There's no working components to it, but it is a really nice looking representation of how the gun that he sports in the show itself. The gun can be slid into the holster, although one thing you do have to be careful of is these little side areas of the pistol on both sides. I don't know if you can see it, but they do stick out from the rest of the gun. So when you are sliding into the holster, be mindful of that you don't accidentally, as I'm about to do so here, you don't accidentally get this part caught on the outside, and as you force it down, this may potentially break. So you may want to be very, very careful. You even may want to find yourself even prying open slightly the holster so you can get the full pistol down there without causing any damage to it. Mind you, as nice as it may look in the holster, it looks even better in his hands, and to accomplish this, you can make use of one of the many interchangeable hands that come included with the figure. Malcolm Reynolds' accessories will also include. Comes with a communicator, which can fit very easily into his hand. It is completely sculpted all the way around, and given a very bare minimum amount of paint to it, relying more so on it looks like it was cast in almost a dark, almost gray plastic, and it looks like they've scratched in or dry brushed some additional gray to that. This is also the QMX exclusive, so it's going to include the Laster laser pistol. And it does also look very nice and very accurate to how it appears in the show. A combination of that same sort of gray colors we saw with the communicator, but now adorning itself with some additional silver in the handle portion, some beiges, and some additional grays there as well. It looks really quite nice. I may not necessarily display him with it, but accessory-wise, I generally jump at the chance to have a look at exclusive items, because it's always nice to kind of get with these little, specific nods to the show, in this case Firefly. So it's nice to include something like the Laster. You could obviously pick him up without the Laster laser gun, but I prefer to actually pick up the one that has it, so I'm glad I did. He then also gets a series of interchangeable hands. One hand, let me just actually show you here. He's got a pair of closed fists. I just so happen to have the one already in the one socket, and then the other one is the trigger finger for the blaster. This hand isn't so bad. I did, however, notice, let me just show you here. If you compare the two hands, obviously these are the mirror copies to one another. This one has some additional blue that they've added to the vein areas of his hands. I don't know if that is intentional. I'm guessing it's probably just by accident, because it does make the hands look awfully veiny. Normally, like this hand isn't so bad, I do think that this is probably just a mistake that that was made on their part when they were painting the particular hand. It is a little on the veiny side. This hand, again, this hand right here is not too bad. Sorry, Malcolm, for the next hand, I have to actually take it out of your socket, so you're without a hand right now. He does also have a trigger finger hand that sits perfectly into the handle and trigger area of his pistol. Now, he does also have another one as well, which is similar in size, although it's a much broader grip. So this one fits a little bit better when it comes to the Laster laser pistol. And if you line up everything just right, you can fit 3 fingers or 2 fingers around the handle portion, and the third pointer finger actually where the trigger would be. Rounding out the last of his hands, he comes with a slightly relaxed palm, as well as a pair of palms that are in the gloves, should you wish to display them with that instead. Mechanix also got you covered, so in case you have some problems with the existing pegs that you have in the sockets, or if you just take the hand out and you can't get the peg out, they give you an extra pair to work with as well. Malcolm Reynolds will have the following articulation. For his head, because his head is sculpted into the neck, what you're really only getting is the ball joint that's attaching itself into the stem or cavity of the neck area. Still, you can rotate the head all the way around. You can hinge the head up and down, and you can also get yourself a rock back and forth as well. I want to do the articulation with the jacket on so you guys can see it's not limited by any stretch of the imagination. It does, of course, get a little tight when you start moving the arm forward, but it still affords enough of a movement that you don't feel like it's restricted at all. It does have a double bend in the elbow. Unfortunately, these elbows a little on the loose side. I'm only going to say it's probably my figure. I can't see that can be across the board on all the existing figures. Hands rotate all the way around, as well as a hinge back and forth. A lot of times I find when I'm moving the hands, they do want to pop themselves out of the sockets, these little pegs here. So we'll just kind of wiggle that back into place like so. There we go. Upper torso has a crunch. You also got a lower waist swivel. And really the only disappointing thing I find about this particular figure is not really the sculpt, it's not the outfit, it's the legs. And again, I'm going to assume it's only really my figure. The legs move back and forth as well as out. He has a top swivel cut on the top portion of the thigh. And then he has really loose knees, unfortunately. Oh, I wish that not be the case. What I may try to do is take the pants off, see if I can actually have a look at the joint, and maybe see if I can add something additionally to the joint to kind of stiffen it up a little bit. Then we get down to the lower boot area, which does have a rotation happening there. I'd say a hinge up and down, but it's really more so you're just bending the rubber boot here. And a lot of times when you are bending it, you may find that the boot bends out completely. And just to show you the inner workings of the boot, inside there is the socket, as well as you got the ball joint hinge here. So when you are attaching it, you may find yourself a lot of times putting the boot in place. It fits like a little loose, so you just want to add a little extra tension to that until it eventually stays in place. I waited a very long time for this figure to be released, and now physically in hand, I'm very happy with the results. I'm glad that Quantum Mechanix saw that maybe the head sculpt, the first head sculpt that they were going to go with, didn't quite deliver exactly what they had hoped to. So they went back to the drawing board and kind of re-sculpted a brand new head sculpt. I think the end result is the second new and improved head sculpt is leaps and bounds better than the other one. There's nothing really too much wrong with the original one, but the original does feel a little fuller, and the paint looks like it's a little bit more simple. This is a much better head sculpt, in all honesty, the second one that they released. So again, I'm glad that they went back to the drawing board and they gave us the new head sculpt. Everything about this figure really screams Firefly to me. Firefly, again, is one of my all-time favorite sci-fi shows. So now getting a Malcolm Reynolds in 6-scale treatment, there's nothing I really would fix about this figure other than the loose joints in the knees. And I have to mention that again, because it's something that's very obviously noticeable here, at least on my figure. And I want to stress this enough, that this may not be across the board for everybody. So if you did pick this figure up for yourself, let me know down below in the comments section, do you have loose joints in the knees? I don't think it's going to be everyone's figure release. I think unfortunately I'm just lucky enough that I got one that had loose knees. So Be it for the fact that I'm going to obviously be displaying him with a display stand, so I really don't have to worry about the knees giving me problems over time. It is a little of a disappointment for me that the knees had to be as loose as they did, or loose as they were. He's got some good accessories. He doesn't come with a whole heck of a lot, but it's nice that if you did get a chance to get the exclusive version, it does come with the Laster laser pistol. Will I ever really display him with that? Not necessarily, because I think he looks really cool currently holding his existing pistol in hand. This guy is currently available now, so if you guys are interested in picking this guy up for yourself, I can even put the Quantum Mechanix website down below in this video description, should you want to head over there and just check out some of the other cool things that Quantum Mechanix are releasing currently. In the meantime, today we were having a look at the Quantum Mechanix QMX Master Series Articulated. This was the Firefly Malcolm Reynolds 1/6 scale articulated figure. This is now the second franchise that we've looked at on this channel for Quantum Mechanix. The other sci-fi property that they handled, of course, is Star Trek. And I've yet to be disappointed by the figures that they've released for the Star Trek property. I would hope maybe that they expand on this and maybe give us some other sci-fi related articulated figures, maybe some Doctor Who, or something else I was thinking about. I would love to see Farscape. I think Farscape would be a fun property. I don't know if many people would go back and pick up 6 scale figures of Farscape. I know I certainly would. But it's just some food for thought if Quantum Mechanix is looking to expand and broaden the scope of the sci-fi figure that releases that they would put out there. Obviously, if you're going to be putting out a John Crichton, or if you're going to put out a Dargo, I would definitely be grabbing that in a heartbeat. Just FYI. If you guys wanted to also go back and have a look at some of the other Quantum Mechanix figure reviews that I've done on this channel, there's a Quantum Mechanix playlist that you can watch at your viewing pleasure. Also, if you haven't had a chance to hit that little subscribe button down below, make sure you do so. More videos will be coming your way. As always, thanks for watching as you always do. I'll see you guys next time.